Now, without further delay, let's begin today's event, sponsored by Onfido and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Mike Sisk. Mike, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Karen, and I would like to welcome the audience once again. We are very grateful that you've chosen to share some of your busy day with us. We know that your time is valuable, and for the next 60 minutes or so, we will make every effort to make every minute count. Once again, our topic today is how can real identity transform trust? And my name is Mike Sisk. I will be your moderator today. I am a contributing editor at American Banker, and my articles have also appeared in Barron's, Crane's New York Business, Inc., Institutional Investor, Strategy and Business, and Worth. And I am very pleased to introduce our two speakers today and welcome them back. Alfy Louis is Financial Services Advisor at Onfido. Alfy is an accomplished senior executive and board member with more than 25 years of experience across the financial services, banking, and technology industries. Throughout his career, Alfy has held various leadership positions, including Managing Director at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Founder and CEO of the Bank Cloud, Executive Vice President of Sales Alliances, Services, and Product Development at D&H, and Global Advisor in Sales, Strategy, and Business Intelligence at VMware. And we are very, very happy to have Alfy back with us here today. And joining him is Ed Ackerman. Ed currently serves as the Director of Alliances and Partnerships at Onfido. He joined the company in 2016 as Head of Client Management and has been instrumental in driving the company's commercial strategy and record revenue growth. Prior to Onfido, Ed led a high-performing team as head of UK channel partnerships at Google, and he started his career as a management consultant at Deloitte. And we're also really very pleased to have Ed back here with us as well. Just before we jump into things here, I wanted to reiterate one thing real quickly that Karen mentioned, and that is that we do have some time set aside at the end for Q&A. Usually we've got 10 or 15 minutes or so. You don't have to wait until the end to put your question in the queue. You can do that throughout the hour as it occurs to you, and we encourage you to get those questions into the queue, and we'll make every effort to get to everyone's questions. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just run out of time and we can't get everyone's questions, or sometimes it's just a question better answered one-on-one. But in any event, if we don't get to the question you've asked today, we will follow up definitely after the program. So your voice will be heard. We really want to hear from you, so please ask away. And with that, I think I'm done with my little opening spiel here. I would like to officially turn things over to Alfy to really get the ball rolling here. Alfy, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're going to do every bit of an effort to ensure that you get the information you want, but also we're going to share with you a point of view as to how we can maintain the trust that the industry have enjoyed for the longest time with its customers. The customers, as we all know, believe in the security and the safety and the accuracy of transactions they conduct with their banks and financial institutions. The banks also found ways to trust its customers. They have been lending their customers all sorts of money and handling all sorts of sensitive transactions. The banks did fantastic managing fraud, predicting fraud, controlling the fraud quite successfully. Also, you could argue that customers are shifting in today's world to digital. So banks are almost forced to go almost 100% digital. Can they trust? And the argument that we're going to make in front of you is to how can you build the trust in the digital world using technology. So I'll pass it to my colleague Ed to talk about his observations, and we're going to go back and forth to share our point of view. Meanwhile, please ask the questions as you need to. Ed?
Thank you, Alfy. That's absolutely right. So Alfy mentioned trust is the bedrock of banking, and today's presentation is going to focus on how we can maintain that trust as we move from a physical world, typically with branches, to a far more digital-oriented world. So starting off with sort of how we position our trust in banks and where that sits when banking goes online. So during the COVID pandemic in particular, many of us have rushed to access banking online. In some cases, it's just been impossible to physically visit branches. And this gives us a huge opportunity in the banking industry to allow customers to transact with you for various journeys. That can change the role of branches, and a point that Alfy will discuss next. And to give you one sort of personal example of how this sits, very recently I was between meetings and I got onto my phone. I have a digital-only bank called Revolut, which I use for my current account, checking account banking. Within that, they have partnered with DriveWealth, a company that allows you to trade stocks. And within 10 minutes, I was able to set up a trading account with DriveWealth and actually purchase stocks, in this case with Apple. And all of that without having to leave the comfort of my home and in between meetings in such a short space of time. That for me was a really, really beautiful experience. And I don't think I would ever have paused to consider trading offline now. I think that's really set the benchmark and set the standard that I would expect when making those types of purchases. On the other hand, as this slide shows, many of us are still very much concerned about banking online. Okay, there's been a huge rise of scam ads, of phishing attacks. Social engineering is prevalent, and that's led to concerns about fraud. Intuitively, we all feel more susceptible when we bank online versus going face-to-face and dealing with an individual in branch. And Alfy, if I hand back to you to talk about that branch experience in a bit more detail.
Sure. Thanks, Ed. So the banks and the credit unions have established the trust early on in the relationship via the branch. You and I walked to the branch, shook the hand of the banker, we showed our identity, we validated and verified who we are, who we claim we are. We started the relationship, and the banks capitalized on this relationship to acquire the customers, to enhance the service, to offer the portfolio of the services. They build the capacity for scale. In a sense, they justify the physical and geographical presence by the trust impact. In the digital world, the question becomes, how do you maintain the same trust? How do you expand your portfolio? How do you extend your reach? How do you justify the cost structure that you're putting into your branch today if people don't come to your branch? How do you ensure that the branch or the infrastructure or the channel of today is delivering on its promise of that trust? And the question really becomes, how do you, in light of all of these challenges, activities, cost structure reduction, how do you continue to grow your member base or customer base? How do you serve and satisfy your customers? How do you enhance the customer experience? If people don't walk to the branch, what are you going to do? How do you manage the cost structure when you're paying 40% of your cost to maintaining the branch and its current current footprint? How do you compete to win in a world where everybody is virtual? So the real heart of the question is, how do you establish that trust using digital and virtual world? The answer to that question is becoming a customer-centric model. So flipping how you operate today from products into a world of customer centricity. And we say customer centric, that means it's about end-to-end systems that evolve around the customer. It's really about a real-time interaction and a real-time transaction when you deal with your customers. You need almost real-time trust, real-time accuracy, real-time artificial intelligence. It's a real-time customer experience. And the heart of this conversation is, how do you offer that real-time customer verification immediately, instantly, so you can capitalize on that relationship and instantly gain that trust? Ed?
Thank you, Alfy. And I think, what Alfy touched on there, this customer centricity, we see that an equation of two components. One is this trust aspect that we've been speaking about throughout, and the other is how do you personalize that experience to make that user feel even more trustworthy about the experience that they have with you online. And I think one of the things that we think about in this phase is what would it take to build customer centricity? And oftentimes when you're talking about the dreaded phrase of digital transformation, it sounds endless. It sounds hugely expensive. You're anticipating a massive, potentially multi-year project or program of works to get fit for purpose online. You've spent so much time, energy, investment in doing that offline. Do you have to repeat that same process and do it all over? And I think, thankfully, for us, it really isn't about ripping out and replacing your entire organization. We're not saying go after all your systems, go after all your operating models, upheave all of your processes. That's absolutely not the point. What we're trying to get to, and what we think is a sensible approach here, is to start small and drive disproportionately big impact by prioritizing. And so what are you going to prioritize? We want to sort of think about the customer experience first. We want to put the customer at the center of what you do. And so you may actually look at all of the customer journeys that matter. I want to open an account. I want to remedy an account takeover attack. I want to open up a new product. It could be any number of these customer journeys. But what you might want to do is to say, let's pare that back. Let's think about the ones that matter most to the customer and the ones that we think we could actually do something beautiful with in a digital framework, and actually build trust with customers by doing that, by going out after those handful of customer journeys that matter and building magical experiences. And one of the ways to think about this is you're not here to try and recreate a branch experience. You're not looking to make something identical to what I may be able to do in store. On the contrary, going online is a completely different experience. And some things are nowhere near as rich, and other things can be amped up and can be even more impressive and even more beautiful. And that's exactly what we think is the way to do it. It's create beautiful new interactions, things that go above and beyond the branch experience, and allow you to do more in branch at the higher value end of what you want to achieve with your customers. So going back to my example before, I wouldn't go into a store now to buy stocks or open a savings account. My default has become digital, and that is what I expect it to do, and that's what I expect of my banks and my financial services. So you think about that from your perspective. What are the high volume customer needs that could be better met online? How could you do something even more special for your customers digitally and remotely from the comfort of their own home, rather than bringing them into a physical space? And really, how are you putting that in-person experience of the branch when we're able to get back out and we're able to go and visit those in greater numbers? How can you use those experiences to best effect? What are the really high-value interactions that you want to undertake with your customers that you don't want to make them go through a digital experience for? And even just, as I say, taking 3 to 5 of those journeys and thinking those through from end to end can give you a great sense of where you could take this. Alfy, I'll hand back to you to talk about real-time transactions.
Sure. So just to add color to what Ed was saying, if you really examine the customer journey going through dealing with a bank or a credit union, it's really the trip that a customer takes from signing up to join your bank, and we're talking about the digital world, becoming a customer, needs to show an identity of sort, needs to establish security boundaries of sort, need to register him or herself into the world of your operation, need to be verified, need to be authenticated, and then you can move on to operations, whether you're going to grant him a loan or you issue a credit card or you open a bank account for him, whatever the transaction, the operating transaction is. All of these steps are part of a journey, and if you really drive it to be more of a customer-centric, as I said earlier, it's really about having all of this transactions being done real time. Establishing the trust at the point of account opening is the key and the fundamental function of building that trust. It's almost the handshake that we got used to in the real world And if the handshake is not weak, you could not establish that trust. We're using the same analogy to establish that trust at the point of the initial transaction. When you acquire the new customer, when you verify and the proof his identity or her identity, when you really bring them on board, when you authenticate them, that's where the trust is being established. So traditionally, the branches played that role. Branches offer that personal, real-time engagement, and the banks felt good about the relationship, the customer felt good about the relationship. However, as Ed was saying earlier, this is not really about ripping and replacing your system. It's about extracting the identity management beyond your core systems, beyond your core banking applications, beyond your core lending and processes. You really deal with customer as the sole entity that you focus on. So can you expand your system? Can you expand your procedures? Can you expand your protocols by layering the identity platforms on top of them is really what we are preaching here, is what we're saying. Keep your system, whether it's legacy or modern, as is, but put your identity as a layer on top and ensure that you can establish that trust, tying and marrying the physical identities with the virtual identities. So here's exactly how we do it here in ForgeRock, is by literally marrying your identity, your physical identity, your government-issued ID with your biometrics. And we're going to explain in a bit how it's done. But the fundamental premise is by marrying your physical or tying your physical identity with your virtual identity, we know who you are, you know that your digital footprint is matching your identity. And this real identity becomes the essence of all the transactions moving forward. So that's really the value proposition that Onfido is capitalizing on, but also is the value proposition that we see that could change the whole digital world upside down by offering real identities in the digital world. How we do it, I'm going to let Ed walk you through how we do it and the science of doing it so you can understand and appreciate how it's done.
Thanks, Alfy. Yeah, so I'll spend a few moments now just getting you through Onfido's proposition, how it works, and sort of what's behind the curtain. We'll obviously, if you have specific questions for us, please do type those away in the Q&A, and we'll endeavor to get to those at the end. What I'll do is just give you a headline overview as to what this looks like. So starting off with the actual product. So step one is user engagement. This is what is your user, what is your customer, what is your member doing with you to engage with you. And so here we to anchor a real identity, we do two things. First of all, we guide the user to capture government-issued photo identity. She then snaps a photo or video of herself, and that is it. The user enjoys a really simple, quick experience to prove her identity, and that's often within the flow of a wider sign-up journey. There may be further inputs that the customer needs to make or further requirements that you as the bank or credit union have. But in terms of identity proof, this is it, a document and face, and that face can be either video or photo, but that's it. It tends to take seconds for that customer to complete that process. It's pretty beautiful in its simplicity. The document alone won't assure you the person presenting it is the same person, the rightful owner of that identity document. And moreover, fraudsters can get hold of genuine documents. It's much, much harder to get hold of a document and then have you, the owner of that document, agree to it to be used for fraudulent purposes. And that's where the selfie or the video capture complements our approach. What we're looking to do here is verify both the user's document is genuine, but also that it was presented by the same person, the person who is signing up for your services. And so we'll give you a quick example of sort of what we have to do to make this work. So it's not just a case of capturing that document and sort of passing a quick visual and saying, yeah, that looks fine. fraudsters are pretty adept at fooling us, not just in the digital world, also in the physical world. It's why in 14% of cases at border control, humans get it wrong when they let people in or out of the country. This is a very, very difficult problem to solve. And this example here that I'm going to sort of put forward to you explains in a little bit more detail why. So the user submitted her document and face, and now we want to verify that the document is genuine and the face matches, right? So here's an example of a document or 6 documents that have been uploaded. And I suppose that the question to ask you is, which one of these documents is fake? Now, you can't actually speak now, you're all on mute, but think about that and grade yourself, because I'll transition to the next slide where I show you in a bit more detail which one's which. So who had that? I'm sure all of you, right? I can't see a show of hands, but if we were in a forum, you'd all be shaking vigorously saying, yeah, I knew this all along. Top left is the original document, and it turns out all of the other 5 documents have some kind of manipulation. And these are manipulations or changes to the document that we, Onfido, have made for this demonstration, but these are characteristic of some of the types of fraudulent activity and some of the fraud attempts you may see on documents in the real world. In fact, at the end of last year, we released a fraud index which characterizes some of the fraud that we see, and we can share that with you afterwards if you're interested. But interestingly, these are exactly the types of often unsophisticated fraud and sometimes sophisticated fraud that we may come across. So let me step through some of these in a bit more detail to explain what's going on. I appreciate the screen may not show it all. So we look at a number of things when we're assessing the authenticity of the document. And if we start at the invalid ID number, we often start with the data that's on the document. We want to make sure that the numbers are in a certain sequence and match what the rest of the data on the document shows. And in this case, you can see that those numbers have been changed. The next thing we might look at is the security features on the document. So complex patterns or holograms that feature across documents, these are often difficult to manipulate successfully, and so we'll be looking out for those. Looking at the bottom row and starting with the image editing piece, you can see clearly here that this face is completely different to the other 5. And so what we see here is that the face has been swapped for the original face. And this is not an uncommon technique. Sometimes easier to change one thing and put your fraudulent face in there than change the body of the document and all the other aspects of that. And so we're looking for telltale signs that someone has physically or digitally edited the face on the document. For font verification, interestingly, document manufacturers, they'll use a variety of different fonts, often specific sort of to a specific specification. You can think about passports all using exactly the same font, and sometimes with intentional errors in the font itself to help catch lazy fraudsters out. And then lastly, we have this notion of pixel tampering. So you can think about kind of a copy-paste style fraud attack here, where someone is taking elements from the document and shipping them across. Whether the document has been physically or digitally manipulated, these are things that we're looking to do and to uncover. And as I mentioned, it's often difficult to do this. In a 2D world, we're being served up with the image of the document, whereas we can feel it, we can open it, we can play with it physically in a 3D world. And so to get this to a high degree of accuracy, we use proprietary AI, and that's what we put forward to do the heavy lifting, and that's what solves for most of these fraud attacks. Moving on then to an example of what we're looking at when we think about the facial biometric check. So this is a check of whether the person who's presented the document behind the phone or behind the computer screen is the same person that we see in that document. And in this example I'm giving you, it's just a headline of video texture analysis. So this is one of the algorithms that we put in place to catch would-be fraudsters in the act. And so what we're seeing at the top is a genuine user journey. Okay, so you'll see the user is filming herself live, and we can detect and track her face, and the machine believes to a high degree of confidence that the attempt is genuine. And that's what you see in the heat map at the far right, it's mostly green. In the bottom three screens, quite to the contrary, we see the same video, but this time it's a film of a screen. Okay, so this is a pre-recorded video, and someone is filming that pre-recorded video from another device on a screen. And so again, we can detect the face, but we can also detect that it's not been captured live, but instead recaptured later. And we do this by analyzing the texture. And as you can see here in this sort of mock-up, the spoof heat map is much more red, and this gives us a high degree of confidence that the image and video, I should say, along the bottom is fraudulent versus the one at the top, which is a genuine attempt. So with this and many other algorithms layered over one another, we can return results to a high degree of accuracy, and importantly, do so within seconds. If you think about what you are looking for, both as a customer, but also as a bank or financial services firm, you want a high degree of fraud accuracy, you want it delivered very quickly, and you want as many users who you paid to try and join your bank or transact with you to get through. And so those are the three buying factors that we consider, and these are the three things that we're arrowing in on to maximize. That is pass rates, how many people get from the start of the flow to the finish, fraud accuracy, how good we are at detecting those handful, typically 1 to 3% of bad actors, and lastly, how quickly we can return those results to you. I won't go on and talk to you in detail about what we return in terms of the results, but you can imagine it's a fairly detailed breakdown, and the idea is to give our customers as much assurance and also as many data points as possible and as many signals as possible to embed this in their user journey and their user flow, and ultimately build trust with their customers, that they're letting them in and taking them on a very robust journey to onboard them. Alfy, I'm going to hand back to you now, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, thanks, Ed. So you've seen, at least you've heard us talk about how you build the trust and what's the meaning of the trust at the first point of interaction, and you've seen us demonstrate to you how it works in a few minutes. Obviously, we're happy to share a lot more, but you get an idea of how do you establish a real trust through a real identity. So if I can take you on an imagined journey, the use cases are immense. I could go on and on for how you could use such technology and how such value proposition in building various features and functions inside your systems. And I could go on from, registering new customers, acquiring new customers, onboarding customers, securing access to various systems, cross-selling to them, validating transactions if you need to, resetting passwords, closing accounts, all of these activities. But I wanted to be precise when it comes to, the extensibility function. As I said earlier, customer centricity is not really about ripping and replacing your old legacy systems. This is really about layering on top of it an identity platform where you can genuinely validate and verify and improve the access. And you could argue that you could extend it to all banking activities. You could extend it to all decisioning activities. You could extend it to all payments activities. And could you imagine the effort and the cost associated with simplifying the extensibility function? Could you imagine the simplicity of making your core banking system far more agile, far more efficient, far more active and dynamic with the new users? I could go on, but I also wanted to go into a revenue generating mode. We all know the mortgage business and the loan origination business, how extensive, how complicated, how many documents are being originated, how many visits are required, how many signatures are needed, and the particular exercise of verifying that the borrower is the real entity that I'm dealing with. So I could imagine a world of loan origination. I came from that world personally. The the loan origination or the mortgage origination system, if I can simplify that exercise by proving that Alfy is Alfy or Ed is Ed without having to drag Alfy into the banks and the attorney and the title office. The whole entitlement exercise of moving titles around, I don't know if some of you have dealt with it or not, but this is an extensive exercise, a complex exercise. Let's talk about the experience that consumer deals with. You could 100% eradicate that exercise and make it pleasant experience by asking for a selfie for Alfy to prove who he is. Talk about the consent exercise. Talk about the disclosures that you need to share, and you need to ensure that the borrower has seen those disclosures. I see use cases in various banks in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. that make this whole mortgage origination exercise far more simpler, far more efficient. And I could talk about savings of 40 to 50% of time, and God knows how many in terms of cost. So the argument here is you could simplify this loan origination, almost the loan transaction end to end, by verifying the real identities of the borrowers. The other exercise is, the operating efficiencies. We all know that the branch costs a lot of money, almost 40% or so of the total cost structure. So think about the automation that you get out of this. Think about the fraud detection. I mean, Ed talked a bit about, detecting fraud early on, but, the cases could go on and on and on. The costs could go on and on if you can genuinely capitalize on this alone. Think about the cost associated with the physical world, and you can eliminate most of that. Think about the speed that you could get out of an automated system like this. Think about the accuracy that you would achieve when you dump the right data into the right systems. Think about the simplicity that you get out of this when you operationalize using real identities of this magnitude. The final statement is, I did not want to start with the KYC. As we all know, it's one of the simplest cases, but think about taking the data, exporting the data from identities, eliminating all this, data entry errors, dump it into your core systems of record or core systems of intelligence, ensuring that your interacting systems are accurate and efficient and driving for the right results. To me, the benefits are immense and the use cases are huge. So I'm going to stop here just to get you guys to think about all the possibilities. And again, I'm happy to take questions as to what use cases and what benefits have we seen in the exercise. But I'm going to pass it to Ed to talk to you about, how we implemented this in various banks. You might recognize some of these names, and as you could imagine, we could not publish all of the names, but we'll talk about the use cases in general. Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Alfy. So predominantly we sell into banks. They have a very high degree of trust. They're not the exclusive customer set. 25% of our business sits with transportation and other use cases designed to engender trust. But we do most of our work with both high street and challenger banks. We do that really because of the accuracy of our fraud. So we can catch up to 98.7% of identity fraud attempts, and that's a key differentiator for us and a key reason why we may win in head-to-head trials with our competitors. Just to give you some examples to sort of bring these names to life and some others too, we think about a few different features, specific user experience, customer conversion, and cost reduction. And I just want to give you an example or two from each of those to bring this to life. So if we think about user experience, one of our customers, Barclays, has improved its user experience by allowing customers to verify themselves within the bank's app. This means that hundreds of thousands more customers are able to avoid a branch visit and create an account from home, in much the same example I was speaking about before. We're now working with HSBC to achieve a similar outcome. Also in the user experience bracket, we work with a multinational life insurance firm, and they saw a huge amount of people failing, up to 70% of people failing to complete their knowledge-based authentication when they were unlocking their policy online. Now customers have the option to unlock with a document and selfie in the examples as shown. That has uplifted completion rates by more than 2x. Thinking about customer conversion, and one of the names here on the slide, Bunk, a challenger bank in Europe, they've achieved 5 times more users verified and onboarded versus their previous provider. And lastly, in that cost reduction example, MoneyMatch, a remittance firm based in Asia, has achieved an $8 saving in cost per verified user. So just some of the examples of scenarios and customers with which we've caused a pretty transformational change in their onboarding flow and customer journeys around identity verification. I'll hand back to Alfy to finish this off.
Thanks, Ed. So let me just quickly introduce Onfido and share the success of the company with all of you and how we engage to close the conversation in preparation for your questions. So Onfido's been around for 7 or 8 years. We're over 350 people now. We conduct this identity verification / anchoring physical and digital identity together in 195 countries, so we can accept documents from 195 countries. We have over 1,500 customers globally, and as you could imagine, the majority of our customers are really financial services, financial institutions, banks, and so on and so forth. We have raised about $200 million or short of $200 million pounds because we're based in London. However, we have access to the world, and we have presence in most of the countries. Certainly, we have a significant presence in the U.S. As you can see, we have top investors: Microsoft, TPG, Salesforce. We also been awarded quite a few. I mean, there's no slide that I can put. There's not enough slides to put there just to show you the awards that we've been winning. So fundamentally, we're growing at a double 100%, double 2x monthly or quarterly. So we're doing fantastic financially. We're also increasing our footprint quite vastly in almost every country here. But the key here is how do we engage? And the engagement is not really about having software or an SDK you download, an API you integrate on your own. We believe that every customer is unique. Every opportunity is different. Your requirements are different. Your use cases are different. Your volumes are different. Your financial situation is different. So we believe that we need to, understand where you're coming from, your topology, your system, your capacity, your legacy technology, and how do we work together. So we engage as consultants. So we would spend time, not a lot of time, but meaningful time with you and your team to understand your systems of record, your compliance position, your practices and procedures and processes. We understand your desire to be digital or semi-digital, your maturity, if you wish, in the digital world in a let's just call it discovery workshop. And as we progress, we can work together to implement the use case, whether it's a KYC use case or know your applicant use case or reset your password use case, whatever the use case might be. And I can assure you I've examined about 45 use cases so far, and I've heard about probably 45 others. So the idea here is how do we document it? How do we design review it? How do we ensure that everybody accepts this whole notion of new innovation? And then we go through the process of validating throughout the organization, so ensuring that your organization is buying in. It's not just a small project or a science project aside. How do you put this inside the organization, ensuring that there's a business case for it, that everybody is supporting, and the benefits are going to be reaped? And finally, we could draw out the plan to deploy this whole technology. And by the way, this whole journey is hours, not months, not years. and it comes at no cost. You don't expect a customer to pay for it. This is more of our effort to ensure that you're capitalizing on our technology and ensuring that you're getting the best of our technology and deploying the sequences as you need to, as you deem, and as you can capitalize on. So with that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to start to answer questions. Ed and I will start to answer questions. Hope that we've addressed all your needs. However, if you feel that you need more, need to know more and have more questions, I'm happy to interact offline. Mike?
Excellent. Thank you, Alfy. And as promised, we've got some time for questions here. And if you've got something on your mind, now would definitely be the moment to get that question into the queue. But I see some good ones in here already, so let's just right in. And gentlemen, let me just toss out these questions and just feel free to kind of hop in. When you capture the DL, can we extract that data and fill a form?
Yeah, in short, I'm happy to answer that, Ed here. In short, the answer to that is yes. So the question is sort of when you capture the driving license, can we extract the information from that driving license and use that to pre-fill a form? And that is a really important use case. You think about limiting user error and also delighting them in that experience. Well, guess what? If you're able to capture their driving license, extract the relevant information from that license, and serve that back up to them with potential for them to make any corrections, that's a whole lot easier than them having to type out the same information time and time again. And so, yes, that is absolutely a product that we serve, and that extraction of information is a key part of the overall service. We're actually using that. A large gaming company in Europe is using that service to good effect in order to expedite the onboarding of their customers. So, yeah, we call that service autofill, and the answer is yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ed. All right, next question here. Can you use automated logic off the back of returned results?
Yeah, so one of the things that we didn't have a chance to get to in detail today, and as Alfy says, we're always available to catch up offline, is to give you a good sense of what the results look like that we share back with you. So it's not just a binary, yes, this is genuine, or no, this is inauthentic or fraudulent. There are a number of different, what we call breakdowns behind the results, with the idea that you may have a much more nuanced approach to what you're looking to achieve than the next customer. Okay, so this is all about having a risk-based approach and making sure that you're applying the right level of due diligence to each of your customers. And so for some customers, you may be comfortable that it's clear and it's clear at the top level, and that's absolutely fine. For others, you may actually want to do a little bit more scratching of the surface and understand exactly what it was that we cautioned with that result. Is it just that we think the document's expired, or is it more that we think there's an issue with the font or the template used, which would be more akin to fraud? And so what we do is we serve up quite a long list of, I think, 38 different breakdowns under our document check and a shorter number against our facial similarity check, with a view to giving you the actionable insight that you need to go and trigger logic off the back end of those results. And one of the things we do is work with our customers to think through that logic and say, right, what are you doing with these results? How are you consuming Onfido? In some cases, and we think about banks, I know a bank here in the UK, they've been able to trigger automated emails off the results that we provide in order to take that next step and next action without having to introduce an analyst or case manager into that flow. And it just helps them build efficiency and use the tools at their disposal. So yes, the automated logic off the back of returned results is a key part of the value that we can deliver, and we're always happy to consult on that and work with a wide range of partners to make that accessible to our customers.
Excellent. Thank you, Ed. Great. There's a lot of wonderful questions coming in here. Next one. How does Onfido differentiate itself from other competitors in the industry?
So I think let me try and Ed definitely chime in. So I've interacted with quite a few of them. I've examined quite a few of them. The answer of faster, better, cheaper is not enough. Granted, we all agree now. However, I definitely want to emphasize the accuracy and the speed of how our systems and our algorithms work, and the results are showing for itself. And not to brag, but quite consistently, we are going in to accounts where some of our competitors are going up. But I think the argument that I would really genuinely emphasize is our engagement model is really about making it fit. This is a fit-for-purpose type tool. This is not just a broad general tool that, go download it and it's going to work. This is a fit-for-purpose driven value proposition. The use cases are immense. The algorithms that are being put in place are quite significant. The results are quite amazing in terms of accuracy, in terms of fraud detection, in terms of document matching. Certainly, we have enough benchmarks to prove that we are top of the game. But also, it's all about value, right? It's not just about getting a transaction for a penny a transaction or a dollar transaction. This is really about, do you get the right value? So our engagement model / our business model is also fit for a purpose. So this is not just, hey, pay me a dime for usage and do whatever you want with it. This is definitely matching your business needs and your business model.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Alfy. And all right, so I'm glancing through the questions here. There's some good ones, but I think that these are questions we'll take kind of offline one-on-one, but really appreciate everyone's questions in here. So I think, yeah, we've got 10 minutes left to the top of the hour, but I think we will give you back 10 minutes of your day, and if history is any guide, people really do appreciate having a few minutes to gather themselves before they rush off to the next thing at the top of the hour. So let me just formally thank so much Alfy and Ed for being here. Really great content, very interesting, and I want to of course appreciate all of the audience members for being here today and asking these questions. Would not want to do it without you, so really appreciate your participation here today. And please keep an eye out also. We'll be sending you a follow-up email in the next day or two that will have a link to a recording of this event as well as the slides themselves. So you'll be able to review all this material kind of at your leisure in the future and hit the highlights, as it were. So that'll be coming your way. And with that, I think I will officially wrap it up. Wish everyone a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope you'll join us again here very soon. Thanks so much.